come. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the f*** is wrong with you?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee favorably report to the House the Select Committee's final report, which includes the committee's legislative recommendations and criminal referrals of Donald J. Trump and others, pursuant to Section 4A of House Resolution 503.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, there are 9 ayes and 0 noes.
The motion is agreed to.
Wow, big day this week, and there's still a lot of stuff in a holiday week as we head into Christmas and the end of Hanukkah. I think Hanukkah's over. God, I should know this better. I should call my buddy George Santos. We got that story coming up as well in a little bit. Joining us right now is the legendary, the one and only king of Twitter, and that would be Brooklyn Dad, Defiant. And I only say that kiddingly. My kids, who are in their early 30s, I'll go to a party, and my son will bring up that I know you, and these kids are like, you know Brooklyn Dad? I'm not bullshitting you. They really do. They're big fans. So there's a lot, obviously, to talk about. We're going to hear from Mad Money's Jim Cramer and talk a little bit about, Musk and Tesla and Twitter. I mean, he's got to go.
Tesla's down to 126. I just saw, I was like, what the What the Franklin?
So you and I were talking last night, and I admit I'm a pretty emotional person. And when I was watching Zelenskyy speak, I thought of my friend Malcolm Nance, who at my age, we're practically the same age, and he's got a great book out there called "They Want to Kill Americans," and which by the way, I got a dust cover mention on the back of that, which I was really excited about. But I mean, it was easy to talk about Malcolm. Malcolm is one of those people that really walks the walk. To that point, he put a gun on his back and went to Ukraine to help the freedom fighters. And he was there a long time. And so was our buddy Brian Karam. He went over there as a reporter. So, this is not Vietnam. This, as Zelenskyy said, in my opinion, a really important time. Let's listen just a little bit to that speech before the joint session of Congress yesterday.
Against all odds and doom and gloom scenarios, Ukraine didn't fall. Ukraine is alive and kicking.
It was just it was a moving, very moving speech, and you and I grew up in the Cold War, so I mean I have no doubt that Putin has entertained ghastly, draconian, dystopian thoughts, but I also think that there's a lot of people in Russia that don't want to see their country go up in some sort of conflagration as well, right?
Yeah. What really got me last night, the emotion for me was that this guy is a comedian, like in his, just like 10 years ago, he's making comedy movies. I watched one of his TV shows on Netflix. It was like, dude was really into comedy. And
can I just say, can I interrupt you? You know that I've done comedy since 1980, right? I've done it my whole life.
I do.
I have a tremendous respect for people who can understand irony and place it in front of other people in a way that enlightens and opens their eyes. So the fact that he was a comedian actually doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, right?
Well, here's the thing. He's a comedian, but nobody's laughing at what he says. Everybody's taking him damn seriously. A lot of people were brought to tears, right? Just watching what was unfolding.
I was brought to tears. My wife and I were watching it, and it was extremely emotional, thinking of these, these maternity wards that were bombed by Russians and these women and children that were slaughtered by Russian soldiers.
Look, the guy said, I don't need a ride. I need ammo. And from that moment on, I was like, holy shit, that dude's a badass. He could have been on a plane out of there. And so last night, not only was he there in front of a joint session of Congress, I kind of expected to see half of these jackals in the audience, like sitting there on their hands. But no, I was stunned that
Jordan
there
didn't stand up in the
a
back. There were a
large
couple reports.
number of Republicans that stood
Yeah.
up.
Matt Gaetz and Jordan apparently sat on their hands the first couple times and then realized, well, they're idiots. They're freaking morons. But I mean, I don't know what the future is for this. I really don't know. I don't know where this is going. I don't think, as many people have reported, that there's a peace offering. One of the things that they mentioned last night, I think it was on the report I was watching on it might have been CNN, MSNBC, I can't recall. It wasn't on Fox, by the way. One of the things that I find fascinating is this idea that Putin is playing with the rest of the world, saying that, hey, we've made this peace offer. And Zelensky's like, there's no peace offer on the table. I mean, how could you trust these guys anyway? Right? I mean, anything but defeating them or them having them implode in themselves is the only thing you can trust. He's lied at every angle. I mean, he invaded another country with tanks, jets, and drones, and has killed hundreds of thousands of people.
Gaslighting has been one of the most effective weapons in Putin's arsenal, and it's kind of a dud right now. I don't think anybody's buying his bullshit. But the scary thing is, I heard that he's enlisting over 100,000 criminals and randos, for the next wave that's supposedly coming early next year.
Won't work, Brooklyn. They're not soldiers. The first chance they get, they'll run. They're criminals because they were cowards to start with. Either that or a part of like mafioso families in Russia, and they will have absolutely. Training a soldier. Malcolm told me this once. Training a soldier for this kind of combat is similar to putting somebody in a car and putting them in a horrific car accident and expecting them to walk away like, okay, let's do it again, because that's what it's like. I don't think I knew a friend that went through Pendleton, and another friend who went through Paris Island in the Marines, and they said the first thing they try to teach you there is that there's no way we can really prepare you for what you're about to experience. So we're going to try to prepare you for what happens afterwards to your brain. That makes sense, right?
Brutal.
Anyway, so yeah, I don't know, how far this goes and what happens if we give them Patriot missiles so they can shoot down incoming artillery. I know there's a gamble here, but I can't imagine. I would imagine right now that nuclear football that Putin has a close watch on the other side of it. They have a dual key system like we do. In other words, one person can't just launch the nukes themselves. If Putin orders it, there's somebody down the road that has to push another key or turn another key, I should say. So, again, this is what I read, and I hope it's true. And I hope that, nuclear weapons aren't used at some point. You know what else I read too? That with a hydrogen bomb, there's no fallout because it's essentially a fusion bomb.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
It was in one of the articles I was reading today about, the breakthrough we just recently had with fusion. And for people that understand that in the perfect fusion reaction, the only byproduct is helium.
You still get the death and destruction, though.
It moves pockets of air, which blow things over in essence, and heat, and fires and the subsequent, but the truth is, if you go back and look in Korea and in Japan, in the Korean and Japan and World War II, 10 times more people died from firebombs and napalm than died from nuclear weapons. We killed 500,000 people in Tokyo with in the surrounding areas with napalm. And who invented napalm? I heard this on a Malcolm Gladwell podcast. Harvard University is the home of napalm. They don't like to admit it for obvious reasons.
Yeah, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, when they figured out napalm, and they figured out that what it does is it's like globs. So the fire just doesn't go out; it just bounces and it continues to spread, and then that causes it to continue to spread because it gets up in the air. The little pieces land, and they're still on fire. So it's a horrible weapon. So anyway,
it's a massive industry figuring out like the most gruesome ways to kill the most amount of people, the most efficiently and cost-effective way.
Yeah, we'll sound like Yeah. Again, I always, one of the things I always love about the Republicans is when we talk about alternatives to war, they see it as a sign of weakness, when in fact it is a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Negotiating with people that you have entirely different views on everything from culture to life itself.
Can I just add something here? One thing that really irritates me is that, um, they're complaining about the money going to Ukraine, right? There were no complaints about the. Did you hear about the $858 billion military budget that was just passed easy peasy? But when it comes time to come up with money for child lunches, for instance, I ain't got no money. You have to justify or feeding these little rugrats.
Well, that's what
Um,
happens when you're raised in an entitled world, as many white Republicans, and I'll say white, I'm not ashamed to say that, it's true. They grow up with everything they need right in front of them. And then they buy this pull yourself up by the bootstraps bullshit. And it's just, all right. So again, we'll keep an eye on this, and we'll talk about this down the road. Let me ask you about Trump real quick, if I can. And the poll that I have up, let me double check and see where it is. The poll today it's a 10-foot poll. This is something you and I should do, Brooklyn, kind of talking school here on the air. But, the truth is that most of these polling companies, they really can't reach young people because they don't answer their phones when they don't recognize it. They don't answer their phones at all. Right.
Right.
And, and so it's interesting. They block many of these companies. And it occurred to me, that we have there's a real question as to what young people really feel and how they think. And I don't think we really know. And I think we were surprised in 2018 and 2022 by the preponderance of young people that finally said, all right, I'm tired of this bullshit. I'm going to stand up. Anyway, so today's 10-foot poll is, and I'll ask you this question, is putting Trump on trial politically wise? And the first answer is politics, politics, indict now. And the second is a trial could backfire. Well, as you could imagine, 97.3% of the people say indict now. Now that's Twitter. I don't know if we put that out there, I'm sure the number would still be in the majority, but I worry a lot about if we put this guy on, if we put him on trial. A couple things. Number one, getting a jury, the voir dire that could look through people's minds and find 12 people who would listen to all of the facts in the case of the insurrection or the documents, or simply in Georgia. You have them on a tape asking the Secretary of State to subvert the political process. So you got him. You really got him. But what if there's a hung jury, or we don't get him? Does he emerge even stronger? I think. How can you make any other case, right?
I don't think you make the decision based on whether or not, based on the possibility or probability that there will be a hung jury, or that you won't successfully be able to complete the prosecution. You have to do it because right is right and wrong is wrong. And there's no two ways about it. You have to do this. This has to be done. Otherwise, the next person is going to be smarter and more efficient, and they'll be successful, and there will be no impediment. There will be no deterrent, because they'll know, if I get busted, I won't be prosecuted because Trump wasn't prosecuted. There's the precedent right there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got this is a this is an interesting comment here. You got to get people who aren't Americans on your show. Let's get the outside world's opinions. We are affected too. I don't know where you're writing me from, Kyle, but I agree with you. I would love to hear from people, and maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll reach up to Canada, or try to get somebody over in the UK. We've worked with them before on shows. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, I look a little bit at what, Musk has said, and his comments about Fauci, his comments about, this whole thing with Matt, what's this guy's name from the Rolling Stone, Taibbi, Taibbi, yeah. And I look at that story, and I went on and I listened to, I actually watched Tucker Carlson the other day. And if you were to listen to this guy, you would have thought that first of all, they've been talking about Hunter Biden's laptop. For just so you understand, there were pictures of his penis on the laptop. There was nothing on the laptop that was illegal. There was nothing on the laptop that endangered national security. There was nothing. The guy was nowhere near government. He worked for a company that he got, a Ukrainian gas and oil company. He worked for them, and he got the job because his father was vice president at the time. And excuse me, his father had been vice president at the time. He wasn't even in the White House or in any respect. All right. So yeah, he got this gig. You know, I mean, and again, you know, the irony that, you know, with what Ivanka and Jared have done,
$2 billion.
yeah, the emoluments clause is a joke. It doesn't exist. All these guys have gotten rich, and all this guy tried to do is get a job. And, you know, yeah, he has problems, and his father loves him and helps him despite his drug addiction and his problems. That's it. That's the whole story. But then, so they couldn't go with that. They had to get this guy, Matt Taibbi, him again?
Taibbi.
Yeah. I've had him in studio before when I was at KGO Radio in San Francisco, and I was intrigued that he wrote for the Rolling Stone, but I was not at all impressed at his ability to articulate the full position on a subject. He obviously had, he had got access now to some of these papers that, well, listen to Tucker Carlson for a second.
This is a Fox News alert. Elon Musk has provided Matt Taibbi of Substack with apparently thousands and thousands of internal documents at Twitter, and they're coming out as we speak. We've told you this several times. Those documents prove, among other things, that the Biden campaign and the DNC directed Twitter to censor users, and Twitter complied, and did this in the critical final days of the 2020 election cycle.
Okay. First of all, the things that the White House asked to be removed were pictures of Hunter Biden's penis. And other, well, no, I right.
As most good parents like to do, take my kid's junk off your,
right. And the, as far as the other lies, you know, that Tucker said right there is that what they really were trying to do was to get disinformation off that could hurt other people. And those were, you know, again, calls to action from Nazis, from white supremacists. Twitter has an obligation to patrol their platform. And the Democrats and Republicans both have an obligation to point to disinformation or misinformation, point it out and ask for it to be dealt with in whatever way. And that's what the Democrats did. What was happening, we all remember with COVID, the lies, they're still out there. Matt Gaetz tweeted the other day, if you wear a mask in my state, you're an idiotic criminal.
Oh, I think he said it's because you're ugly, actually.
Oh, he's had a few. It's
even worse. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, just so people understand when they hear about these Twitter files, they're first of all, there is no First Amendment issue here, right? The Biden administration did not force Twitter to do anything that Twitter didn't want to voluntarily do. This is, of course, pre-Elon Musk. When Musk came in, as we know right now, you and I were talking before the show about Tesla stock. Where is it now?
At 126, last I checked. It was about half hour ago.
And that's, you know, I mean, if you think about, you know, this is a guy that you're checking it now. Good. This is a guy that, you know, took over Twitter and people went fleeing. And then he started taking, I love this irony.
125.
Wow. So I love this irony. He's taking this company down, and then he's attacking people who are legitimate journalists. This woman just followed me today, who was taken off, remember, for reporting on what he's actually doing. It was interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Who?
I want to say Lynette is her first name, and I'm trying to find her right now on here. It just happened right before I went on the show. And this is the woman that was taken off Twitter for just her job and reporting about Tesla stock and, you know, his ownership. And she asked him tough questions, so he kicked her off. You know, in addition to our good friend, you know, Aaron and who else was on? Who's some other more prominent journalist? A Washington Post reporter,
Keith Olbermann.
Keith Olbermann was, yeah, you know, I love Keith Olbermann, man. You know, he's like one of those few people in the world, you know exactly where he's coming from in every second. I've met him a few times. I've had him on the show a couple of times, and he has no filter. And I mean, you know, it's like a kid, right? You know, that comes in the room and goes, "Ooh, what's that smell?" And like, you know, your uncle just lit one, right? But it is interesting to look at what Kramer and these guys thoughts on this. This is Mad Money's Jim Kramer. Watch this.
By the way, he did ask users, if he should step down, and saying he would abide by the results. 17.5 million votes cast. That's pretty good.
I know. I voted
57% said, yeah,
when
get out of
Contessa
here.
was on. I voted I voted like 524.
The results
Last
are also
minute.
giving a lift to shares of Tesla, of course. As you know, and we've talked about endlessly, the stock has taken a significant downdraft since, you can see it, 31%. That's just since the close of the Twitter transaction.
What do you think it means if he does step down? Does that mean, people keep saying that means bankruptcy. I keep thinking
No.
It just means he's going to find another CEO?
Yeah. Listen, that was always part of the plan. You know, we were looking back. It was in May. Remember when I reported that he was telling the investor group that he had lined up, the $7.14 billion in equity investors that included, Larry Ellison and Mark Andreessen. He was telling them at the time, I'm going to take over. Yeah, that was back in May. That was my story, right? I'm going to be temporary CEO, and then I'm going to find somebody to run the company.
Right.
So I'm going to do it for a few months. And oftentimes these polls, Jim, do seem to be something that he already expects to do.
I know.
And that's what happened. Obviously, he knew that the poll would tell him to leave, and it kind of makes it feel like he's not actually surrendering. He's a complex guy. He's definitely has faults and an odd ideology, but
It's not complicated at all. I think he reminds me very much of guys that I went to school with. And this is not a compliment, some of the jackasses, like the frat boys, who were constantly all about pranking the weaker guys, that was their whole bag, It's totally unnecessary what he's doing. The dude's a freaking billionaire, right? I can think of a billion different ways to spend my time and money and resources if I had his wealth, other than buying, the town square and taking a dump all over it.
I don't know. I didn't ask you how much longer you can stay, but I have a huge story I think you'll really appreciate coming up here. It just broke recently. At least it came to my attention from one of my favorite people to have on this show. The University of California, San Francisco has issued an apology after an internal investigation found experiments were performed on incarcerated people at a Bay Area prison by two faculty members in the 60s and 70s. According to this newly released report, dermatologists, one of whom is still at the university, experimented on at least 2,600 people who were incarcerated at a prison hospital in Vacaville, which is a suburb of the Bay Area, of San Francisco to the north. And joining us right now is Dr. Art Kaplan. He's the founder of the Division of Bioethics at New York University's Langone Medical Center, and always really very generous with his time to come on and talk about this. Say hello to Brooklyn, Doc.
Hey, Brooklyn. I'm a follower of yours, at least until I bailed out of Twitter, but I will be again someday.
Come back, yes. Well, we're going to fix it. Brooklyn and I together, we're going to fix it. This story,
I can't stay much longer, just so you know.
Okay, we'll pop out when you have to. I know you got a lot going on. You got to go save Twitter. But this story, this has shades of Tuskegee, doesn't it, kind of, Doc?
Yeah, it does. Remembering the Tuskegee experiment, individuals were experimented upon for the understanding what happened when you had syphilis. They were poor, they were illiterate. Really, that experiment went south when penicillin appeared and the subjects were lied to and not given the cure. The study was continued so people could see what happened to folks with end-stage syphilis. It really was the horror story of horror stories of American research. And by the way, it was fueled by racism. The only reason that study got done was it was on poor blacks in Tuskegee, Alabama. This prison experiment doesn't have the treatment side. It's just got I'm going to experiment on you. You're in prison. You're kind of a free range zone of potential subjects. They didn't withhold a treatment. They weren't going after any kind of disease cure, but they gave them pesticide exposure, herbicide exposure. They let mosquitoes bite them all day long. Some of the people got paid like $30 a day, which may seem like nothing, but that's a fortune at that time in a prison. So in itself, you probably get some coercion of people saying, well, I guess I'll let you pour pesticides up and down my arm all day if you're going to give me $30. It was all supposed to be with informed consent. It wasn't. And it was all supposed to be reviewed by UCSF's research review committee at the time back then, and it wasn't. So basically, it's part of the reality. I'll put it this way, Chip. America got up on a high horse after the Nazi concentration camp experiments, and said, we're going to have the Nuremberg trial. We're going to issue principles about research. And they did. The first principle of Nuremberg was the informed consent of the subject is absolutely essential. And then we spent the next 30 years violating that principle in all kinds of research, in prisons, in orphanages, in homes for the mentally disabled, in nursing homes on incompetent people, often fueled by racism or just bigotry against disability. That was another major driver. It wasn't until really Tuskegee broke in 1973, not that long ago, that we finally got our house in order and began to make sure people gave consent and make sure that these research things were reviewed. But I'm sorry to be yammering on here, but I'll tell you one other story. The people who did the research in Vacaville, there were two very distinguished dermatologists. They came out of the university. I want to praise the university for trying to form a committee to look at their history. This was a reconciliation with history effort on the part of UCSF, and good for them. Get the history out there, make sure that people know what happened, what people said at the time about why they were doing it, what they should have been doing that they didn't do, protect so it doesn't happen again. Prisoners are still vulnerable today to all kinds of potential abuse. So that's great. We want to give credit for taking that on. At the same time, these two researchers, very distinguished. I think one of them has published 2,500 papers. One of them is still, as you said, Chip, on the faculty. He's probably 95 years old by now. I mean, this guy's maybe practicing, but he can't be doing too much. And people say to me, what do we do with him? Well, what I want to do with him is probably tell him to stop practicing, but partly because he's 95. But what I want is, if there are any honors, lectures, awards that are named after these guys, those have to be pulled. You can't, it's one thing to say, look, at the time we all were going to prisons and, that's how it was done. That isn't true here because people had expected informed consent and outside review, but he's 95, punishing him, I don't know, just get him out of the university affiliation, and then make sure that no one is awarded anything. You might even create a Vacaville prison lectureship so students can learn about this. I'd be okay if you honored the victims rather than, try to go after this guy and punish it. It reminds me, and I hate to say this, but often I'm a little frustrated when we find the 97-year-old Nazi prison guard that we're all going to get worked up about and deport back to Germany. It's like, I get justice, but it's a little late here. We need to be a little more clever. Let's just make sure we get the record straight, get the events taught, get the awards and the honors for these guys out. That would be enough for me.
Wow. I mean, let me just ask you this, Doc. And again, we're talking to Dr. Art Kaplan, Brooklyn Dad, at Twitter, at Brooklyn Dad Defiant. Could there be other examples like this that have happened in my lifetime that we still don't know about, that are still to be uncovered? Or is that just, that's definitely true, that there's many?
It's absolutely definitely.
And mostly against poor people of color, incarcerated people without a voice, essentially, right?
Yeah, we in the ethics side, we often just say it's experimentation on the vulnerable, prisoners, poor illiterate people, often from racial minorities. There was a classic birth control study, one of my quote unquote favorites, done in Puerto Rico on women there to test the efficacy of birth control pills with a placebo arm. Guess what? Placebo did not prevent pregnancy, and the women were assured they weren't going to get pregnant. So You have that kind of stuff.
That's
got
generational abuse.
Yeah,
Right
and
there.
you have situations too in Iowa at an orphanage. People wanted to understand stuttering. They tried to create conditions to make the kids stutter. They scared them, they frightened them, they did unseemly things to them in order to learn, do you acquire stuttering, or if you will, are you born with that particular problem?
I never
And-
asked you this, Doc, but did you have a difficulty establishing a division of bioethics?
Chip, I got to bounce.
All right, buddy. See you again, Brooklyn Dad. Thank you, buddy. In the early, again, we follow Brooklyn Dad on Twitter. You'll learn a lot. It's great stuff there. When you were putting this division of bioethics together and trying to show the significance of how this research and this study for everyone, did you get pushback?
Oh yeah, yeah. Not so much, by the way, at NYU where I've been for 10 years, but earlier. Say at Penn, when I was there, one of the leading dermatologists there, Albert Kligman, did the same studies in a Philadelphia prison. And he was in his 90s then, and I met him. And he said, I don't know why we need you. I'm telling you that research was valuable that I did in the Philadelphia prisons. In other words, he defended it. He said, at the time, all of us, he meant scientists, were running into prisons whenever we could. That's why I know there's plenty of undetected or not admitted to research in prisons. There's a book about Kligman's work, by the way, called Acres of Skin, and the title is taken from his comment that when he first went into the Holmesburg prison near Philly, or in Philly, either closer in, he looked around at the prisoners and said, all I see here is acres of skin that I can experiment on.
Jesus.
So, and by the way, here's something for all viewers to ponder. There are two things that came out of Kligman's work. One, the current treatments used for poison ivy came out of the Holmesburg prison experiments. Two, Retin-A. You treat your acne. That was developed by exposure and studies on unconsenting, usually African-American prisoners in Philly. So I'm often asked, what about research, that's immoral? Should we use it? And what I see again and again in history is we're always using it. It goes all the way back to even using Nazi research on freezing exposures and hypothermia. All the militaries of the world used that data, took a look at that data. It's very tempting to say, well, maybe they didn't do it right, but there's something of value here and I'm going to use it.
Well, I mean, we go all the way back to Hippocrates, right? I mean, and at the heart of this is do no harm. And
Yep.
if you have to harm a human being to do it, find another way to do it.
Exactly. And that's why the first principle that I mentioned about informed consent is essential choice. You have to choose to be in research. That's what the Nazis were told when they said, well, we learned things that were valuable. And after all, they're just prisoners, so we can do what we want to them. Well, the court, our court, by the way, basically said, you still need their consent. You can't just draft people, dragoon people, bamboozle people, force people into research. You can't do that. Let me repeat. That was great, and I agreed with it. It just took 30 years to really get it into our research ethics.
Doc, it's great stuff. I'll if anybody wants some more information about this, email me at chip@chipfranklin.com, and I'll send along the article that Doc sent me. Dr. Kaplan, thank you so much. You have a wonderful Christmas, and we'll talk to you next year. Okay.
Very good.
See you, buddy. Bye-bye. Again, Dr. Art Kaplan, he is the founder of the Division of Bioethics at New York University's Langone Medical Center. And I mean, what a great thing. And I asked him a question I knew the answer to there a minute ago, is that, how hard was it to establish a division of bioethics in the middle of all this research? There's a lot of money in research. There's not a lot of money in saying, wait. These are human beings. Right? All right. God. I tell you, so if you just joined us, thank you for being here. This is an hour show. We do it Monday through Friday. And going to change some things around in 2023. And I'm excited about it too. And we'll have more for you yesterday. I'm off tomorrow, but I will be back on the air next week. And we have our 10-foot poll up today. If you'd like to be part of it, go to Twitter @ChipFranklin, and you can see the poll right now. Let me see what we got. Let me refresh it. The question is a pretty simple one, and it has to do with the former president. is putting Trump on trial politically wise. And, you know, the number one is F politics, indict him now. And that has 97.6%. The other is a trial could backfire. I think you got to think it through. We all want him to be punished. I think there are other ways to punish him that would be even better than putting him away for a month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever it's going to be. And it would be an incredible opportunity for the right to use him as a martyr and to set him up as a martyr. Okay, so this next story is one of my, it's something I want to start doing. It's called "White People Just Can't Help Themselves." And do you recall the story of, and I'm going to mess up her name, but I'm going to try to find it here. You know, as a nation, we may be moving toward more consciousness about what it's like to be an African American in this country. But for most Americans, Black consciousness remains a mystery. It's hard to know what it's like to be an African American, to walk into a Macy's and have security immediately start to follow you, or to have a 17-year-old Black son, and every time he goes out in his car, you wonder if the cops are going to pull him over or kill him. I mean, that's the Black experience in America. If you remember back in 2017, there was a woman named Rachel Dolezal. I can't remember exactly how to say it. I'm looking at a picture of her right now. And she was the one that came out, and in essence, she was a white woman in Spokane who had said that she was the black head of the local NAACP, and said that she had African-American heritage. It turned out she didn't. And then there was a Jessica Krug at GW University back in DC, who was a well-regarded professor of Black studies, whose book Fugitive Modernites is considered to be one of the canon histories of the Black experience. Yeah, you guessed it. She was an African-American. So this next story is about a congressman, an incoming congressman, who is claiming that his grandparents fled the Holocaust. Well, here's the problem. None of that seems to be true. Listen to this CNN report.
Look, as I always joke, I'm Jew-ish.
Throughout his campaign, Republican Congressman-elect George Santos would refer to himself as half Jewish or a Latino Jew, often telling his grandparents' story, how he says they survived the Holocaust as Ukrainian Jewish refugees and converted to Catholicism, changing their surname to survive. Here's how Santos explained it just last month in an interview with the Jewish News Syndicate.
I'm very proud of my grandparents' story. My grandfather fleeing Ukraine, fleeing Stalin's persecution, going to Belgium, finding refuge there, marrying my grandmother, then fleeing Hitler, going to Brazil. That's a story of perseverance.
It's a story that may not be true. His misrepresentations of his family history, first reported by the Jewish publication The Forward, and his story contradicted by numerous sources reviewed by CNN's K-File. Records from the Holocaust Museum and the International Center on Nazi Persecution, which keeps records on Jewish refugees, show no mention of Santos's grandparents. One genealogist who helped research Santos's family tree at CNN's request said there's no sign of Jewish and or Ukrainian heritage and no indication of name changes along the way.
I'm so proud to be able to keep our family going forward and showing that not only did we survive, but now I'm able to go advocate and fight for other Jewish people.
Unreal, right? I mean, so this guy's a Republican and is coming into Congress, and it turns out he lied about his past, you know. And it's interesting, you know, when you go back and look at people that have done this in the past, they lie about the universities they went to, they lie about accreditation they never had. And they totally missed the point that in this country, for the most part, we have a really understanding populace that likes to take the Zelenskyy speech. Okay. Part of what makes us love this guy is his past. I mean, he was a comedian, actor. You know, he thwarted Trump's attempts to get him to investigate Biden. He stood up to, you know, a former president, And then when this country was invaded by a superpower with nuclear weapons, and we offered him, freedom and safety in the United States, he said, I don't need a ride. I need ammo. We love this guy. He doesn't need a resume. He doesn't need that pedigree. And most of us don't. Most of us don't need that. And that's the thing I love about this dude, is that when you look at this and you ask yourself a question about why would people lie? And it's because it's a shortcut. Most of these people that, attain levels of positions of authority, whether it's, I mean, we've heard it all the time, people that lied about they say they have a master's or a doctorate. In some cases, they couldn't have got the job without the lie. I'll buy that. But in many cases, you can get these things just by being yourself and showing a certain initiative. I feel like Tony Robbins here. My son says I always sound like that. But in this particular case, when I look at this guy, I realize, this is where we're headed. This is where we're headed. We have the ability now to post anywhere. I mean, back in the past, if you wanted to propagate a lie, you did it on a resume and you would send it. And it was probably a lot harder to catch people. I mean, if you called a college and said, check the records from 30 years ago, and, they didn't have computers. And let's remember, in mid 80s, we didn't have really access to any of this stuff. 15 years later, we had access to all of it. So when this guy tells this lie, I have two questions. Number one is, why would you lie about something like this? When he called himself a Latino Jew, did he feel that the people in his district didn't like Latinos and he had to make up the fact that he had Jewish blood? Or did he think it would build empathy for him? I don't know. It's interesting. I'm waiting on a guest, and I hope she gets in here. We're going to try to. I was just actually had a call in, and if she doesn't come in, this is what you get on this. Whoop, man, I don't know. You get to look on the behind the scenes here if you want to.
Hey.
Hello, hi. Is this Dr.?
How are you? This is Dr. Fair. Yeah, I was looking for the what do you call it?
The link?
Yeah, I don't see it.
Oh, we didn't see. This is our fault, ladies and gentlemen. We're on the air right now. People are hearing us as we try to put this together. I'm gonna try to send it again. I thought for sure I had sent it to you, and I will send it right over. Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So there you go. So that's how we do this thing. And you just saw in the back end of that. And while I speak to you, I'm going to try to track her down here just in a moment. But I think that part of this, when we talk about people that want these things and they want them bad. I actually had sent it to her. All right. Let me try it again. If people that want things bad that would lie to this extent, it's kind of like Trump. Remember Trump saying he'd been on Time magazine, all the lies he told. It's a tell. And people will tell you this all the time, that when people do these kind of things, when they lie to this degree, and what they're trying to do, in effect, is to obviously build up their credibility, and to try to build themselves up. And then, of course, it all falls down on them. All right. Let me just do this here for you. And I do apologize for you getting to see this, but what are you going to do? Right. There we go. All right. Hopefully that gets to her. She is a cardiologist, and I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to have at this time of year, the things that happen to us, and the number of, the weird thing too about not only heart attacks and strokes over the holidays is, and it's something that's always, I found just really sad, and it really makes me wonder, is the numbers of suicide. We were talking about this on the show a few weeks back about the new net that's underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. I worked in San Francisco for 7 years, and I remember when I first got there, I telling a story out of school, I guess, a little bit, but when I first came into the newsroom at KGO, and it was a thriving newsroom back then, it was interesting. The news director told me that we don't say that when there's a jumper on the Golden Gate Bridge, we don't call it an attempted suicide. We call it a police action. And I said, why do we do that? And they said, because we don't want to encourage people. And at the time, I didn't agree with that. I said, is this really Is this really something we should be doing? Should we be lying to people? And they said, no, this will save lives. And after time, and after being up there so long and talking to people that had gone up on the bridge ready to kill themselves and been talked down by police and others, it did occur to me that maybe there is something to that. All right, joining us right now is, someone that when we look at this and we ask ourselves about the difficulties of this season, it's not just suicide. Obviously, there are many ways that the wonderful holiday season actually can be dangerous to people. And joining us right now is a cardiologist who is Dr. Fahmi Farah. She's a cardiologist, and she's nice enough to join us here. And we figured it out finally, Doc. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Okay, so let's talk about this briefly, about the whole idea of, what the holidays do that make us more susceptible to medical conditions that could be life-threatening. What is it about this time of year?
It's actually multiple things. It's the food, of course. During this time of the year, our food tends to be a lot more unhealthy. A lot of salt in our food, which tends to put people who already have pre-existing conditions like heart failure in acute heart failure, and they can have shortness of breath, they can have swelling of their legs, and they can end up in the ER. Aside from food, people tend to forget to take their medications during holiday travel and distraction. Alcohol consumption goes up. Stress generally is high with all the financial responsibility and buying gifts for everybody. So it's really more than one thing that causes people to end up in the hospital more. Heart attack rate typically goes up in areas where it's really cold and it snows. Snow shoveling, it causes an enormous increase in metabolic activity, and it causes a lot of strain on the heart for those who are not used to carrying on with that kind of activity. Can push them over the edge and cause increased heart attack rate.
And we also have the added specter of COVID now, right? And,
That's correct.
Long COVID, cardiomyopathy, is that the word that we've seen in some people with this?
Yes, cardiomyopathy is a condition that we are seeing as a result of COVID. It's a type of heart failure where, as a result of the viral infection, it weakens the heart muscles and it causes the heart pump. Heart's main job is to pump blood, and cardiomyopathy just means like it's inflammation of the cardiac muscles causes the heart to become weak, and the squeezing is just not as good anymore.
Wow. Do the numbers support this concern? Do we really see more heart attacks and issues of, I want to say, everything from strokes to just, I guess, medical conditions that are life-threatening or debilitating? Do we really see a bump in this period of time?
We do actually. Statistically speaking, we see as much as between 25 to 30% increase in cardiovascular diseases, as you mentioned, like heart attack, heart failure, as well as stroke. The numbers go up tremendously during this time of the year. And we're talking really between the period of Thanksgiving and New Year's, so that entire holiday season.
Where my son and his fiance are coming over, and my son and another person coming. We're making everybody rapid test before they come in, right? So we have testing for everybody. Does that mean we're pretty much safe if they test negative? Then that they probably can't spread COVID if they're tested that day before they actually come in. Generally.
I think so. I think it's certainly a precaution worth taking. It's not to say that, they're completely, it's not a foolproof method. It's not to say they can't spread, but it certainly minimizes it. If they're negative, the chances of them actually having it is less.
Yeah. It is interesting, as obviously is when you hit 60, the world kind of changes. And it's interesting to me in that I've lost so many friends because I grew up in a musician, comedian, entertainment environment, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of misuse. I was fortunate. I just don't have that bug. I tried all those drugs and none of them stuck. Right. And alcohol, I'm Irish though, so I'm aware of the whiskey element. So I stay away from that. I think everybody has to understand that there's a weird cocktail of nature and nurture here, right? I mean, your DNA, sometimes you just get stuck with stuff that you have to pay special attention to: blood pressure, diabetes, heart, everything, right? I mean, and how do you get that? I mean, like when you go into a doctor's office today, it seems like everything's expedited, right? How do you get a game plan to find out, it's maybe this, we all use January 1st as a good day. Why not? Right. It's to moving forward. How do you get that game plan of where you are right now? Let's say you're in your 40s and 50s. How do you get that game plan, and how do you make it work for you?
Well, you said a really important thing, the risk factors, as you mentioned, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, family history, somebody who smokes. All these are risk factors that can cause or accelerate your chances of getting heart disease. So if you have any of these risk factors and you're in that age group, like between 40 and above, you really should get yourself screened. Probably see a cardiologist, get some routine testing done. Starting with an EKG would be a good starting point. Just getting your heart screened is a good idea, especially for those who have strong family history. One of the unfortunate things about heart disease is that most of the times people don't have symptoms. They'll just all of a sudden have a heart attack or a cardiac arrest. And so that's why a lot of times people don't seek help in a timely manner. And that's why I wouldn't suggest that wait until you get symptoms. As long as you have risk factors like the ones I just mentioned, you should see a cardiologist and get your heart evaluated.
Blood pressure, obviously, do your annual physical. I remember when COVID first started, I got one of those things to put on my finger to check my oxygen content. Right. And I have asthma, but I've been on medication for 30 years and I'm asymptomatic. I think about all these things that people have in the holidays. We just dump all this stuff down our throat. And I mean, for exercise, I ran long distance marathons and stuff for years. I'd have been better off walking. I know now because I'm paying the price, right? There are these things that if you figure out in your 20s and 30s can make your 50s and 60s and 70s a whole lot better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an investment on your health. The more you take care of yourself in your 20s and 30s, the early on it is, the better it is. It's paying dividends down the road.
Can I go back in time? But you can fix a lot of this stuff, right? I've read somewhere that people that smoke for like 25 years, after they stop smoking for just a couple, their body has already made tremendous gains to try to get back to where they were, right?
Absolutely. I want everybody to be encouraged that it's never too late to take that first step. Cool. It doesn't matter if you're in your 20s or in your 50s, like it's never too late. Whenever you want to make that decision to quit smoking, that day you start improving your health. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You have a great holiday. I really appreciate your time, and we're going to be chasing you down in the next year to get you back on again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Again, Dr. Fahmi Farah. Farah or Farah?
Farah.
Farah. Got it. Like Farrah Fawcett.
There you go. Yep.
Dating myself. All right. Be well. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. So this is fascinating to me. The fact that, the holidays will kill us.
What an intro. Jeez.
What an intro.
Merry Christmas to you, my friend.
What do you got there? Is that coffee or is that booze? You already on booze?
No, it's coffee.
No,
I had a big old wake up call. Don't overfill your Christmas tree water or all of your Christmas presents will get wet, my friend. So.
No. How, you mean it expands?
No, I mean, I thought that, my husband laughed at me. He's like, it's not like the tree is drinking the water, Nikki. You don't have to fill it up every other day. And I overfilled it. Presents got wet, almost electrocuted myself, but it's fine. I'm doing my holiday show today, Chip. So that's why I'm getting a little festive.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about you know what I did? We talked about Zelenskyy and how.
Yeah, I'll touch on that too.
I had tears in my eyes, man. And I said this earlier to Brooklyn Dad. I said that, Malcolm Nance is a good friend of mine. And Malcolm's gone over there. He's my age. He put a gun on his back and went over there to help these people. And, he's just a tremendous person. And to hear his stories, he was trying to he said, Chip, go. You can go to Kyiv. It's not, it's not that dangerous. You should go and you should see. And,
No. I mean, I admire the bravery.
Oh no, I'm sitting on my ass. I'm not.
Exactly. I was like, let's do the talk show. Is that bad? I hope that's not bad.
Are you testing everybody coming into your house, or are you?
No,
no,
I'm not.
Another good friend of ours just got COVID today. Her birthday's tomorrow.
Oh, that sucks.
I know. Right?
I mean, we're all boosted, and it's not. It's just my brother's family that's coming, and I see my parents.
Wendy
all the
got
time.
it. My wife Wendy, and we were all boosted, and she felt like crap.
Did she? Oh,
still doesn't have it. This she got it right before Thanksgiving. Still doesn't have her smell and taste back entirely.
Oh no! I mean, we've been testing every time somebody has the sniffles, but if you don't have any symptoms,
by that time, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
So my last guest, I love it because she couldn't find the link to join the show, and she called me, so I talked to her on the air and guided her through, so people can see how this whole thing works. We have a 10-foot poll up today, real quick. I want to ask you your opinion. Remember the old 10-foot poll that we used to do? Okay, so the 10-foot poll today is a real simple one, and it has to do, and it's amazing, the numbers. I guess it's not that amazing. Is putting Trump on trial politically wise? And the first answer is F politics, indict now. The second is a trial could backfire. Guess which one has 97%?
F that. Indict now.
But people got to think this through. They got to think it through. I think they are. Anyway, you got a big show starting at 12 today. I had a long talk with Mark Thompson last night too. So his show starts right now.
Right now. Yeah. So got to slide on over there and listen to him, everybody. Yeah. We're going to do some holiday stuff. I'm going to try some holiday sweets for my food segment a day early because today's the last show. We're off tomorrow and Monday for the Christmas holiday or whatever you guys celebrate. We'll touch on Zelenskyy. We'll have some, upbeat stories as well. So it'll be a good show starting at noon.
Oh, cool. All right. So coming right up, you get out of here and wish a happy Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Everybody, Merry Christmas to the Franklin family. Love ya.
One and only Make Me We love you too, kiddo. See you. Bye-bye. All right. Wow, that's about it. Great. Let me see if I can get through some of these here before we go. Like I said, I'm going to be off tomorrow as well. And probably Monday too. So but I just, if you can follow me on Twitter and please subscribe to this. It really helps a lot. Yeah, I mean, a lot of comments on the story that, again, if you want that link to that story about University of California, San Francisco, and these studies on these prisoners in jail back in the 60s, and that one of the guys is still on staff there. That's, I mentioned too, the congressman, there was a lot going on here today, and you can always email me if you need links or you want to hear more about a story that we don't get to, because obviously there's a whole lot of stuff that we cover here in 1 hour. I try to get in as much as I can. And this is as close as we get to phone calls, because I do miss that a little bit, talking to people on the phone, but we might work out something soon. In the new year, we got some plans on how to grow What the Franklin and moving forward. But I guess for now, we're just going to get out of here. Again, my email, chip@chipfranklin.com. You can, whatthefranklin.com. You can just remember that link and it'll always get you back here. If you want to tell people about the show and, you can't explain all the all the aspects of YouTube. Because I know I try to tell some people, they go, how can I see your show? And I say, well, you go to YouTube, you put Chip Franklin in, and I can see their eyes roll back in their head. So just tell everybody whatthefranklin.com. It'll take you right where you are right now. If I won't talk to you before Christmas, have a safe one. And for my Jewish friends as well over this holiday and Kwanzaa and all those other solstice, the Wiccans and all that, here's to you, baby. And we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.
I can handle things. I'm smart.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the fuck is wrong with you?